I am known to talk a lot myself. So come on.
Oh, okay, so we both get it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
We both
Yeah.
get it.
I actually just had an interview
Mhm,
go up on Pack TV where they're like, "Oh,
mhm.
come in and talk," and they're like, "Wow, that was great." I'm like, "Yeah, just used to talking about myself." So,
Indeed.
um, and then they cut down 45 minutes to 8, and I'm like, oh, "That's impressive."
Yeah, that's why they're the editors, and
Yeah,
we're where I just saw that new Willy Wonka movie, and we're the dreamers.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And Inebri-art's that incredibly
Mhm.
is that that's baritone? Is that the right term, or is that or,
Baritone,
or is it bass?
bass would be like the singer, the
Okay.
lower tone singers. I'd want to classify it's Timothy Chalamet in the movies, and in I think Gene Wilder, they would be a bit more maybe melodic
Yeah.
baritone, maybe some soprano a little higher up there.
But no, I mean you specific, like
Me specifically,
yeah,
yeah,
your voice,
baritone,
baritone. So
baritone.
listeners, that baritone voice you hear is Kevin Urban, voice actor. When with a quick Google search, he's done Darth Vader a lot, and after actually hearing his voice, I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Hello. Yes, thank you so much for having me. And yes, my name is Kevin Urban. I'm a voice actor, and I live right outside of Springfield, actually.
Which is not one would think of as a voice actor hotbed.
No,
Uh,
no, it is not. Springfield, Massachusetts. That's probably in like the bottom percentile of cities where you think of like mass market consumption.
Yeah. So is it that with the internet and home studios and all that stuff where it's
Mhm.
is the days of having to like move out to LA over, or is it just kind of you're making it work?
Well, I know people that have personally made a pretty modest living. Some out in Chicago, some out in um, maybe right outside of New York and like Albany that have made a living at just this.
Yeah.
If you want to truly go full on creative, I will never say do not go to New York or LA, or even if you want to go into like anime or video games or something down in Texas.
Hmm.
Um, but the pandemic has closed the gap quite significantly.
It's funny you mentioned Texas because I only found out a couple years ago that that was a big
Mhm.
anime video game hotbed.
Hmm. Oh yeah. If talk with anyone in the industry, talk with anyone who loves anime or even has like a passing glance in it,
Hmm.
they know someone who is in Texas or wants to go to Texas themselves. Um, Something to do with the cost of living down there, but also
Oh, okay.
a lot of great companies like Funimation, Rooster
Hmm.
Teeth, new like these new digital age media giants
Yeah.
started down there. So they were the originals. They started off a lot of what a lot of people are now kind of catching on to.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it was I'm a big fan of Critical Role, which I'm sure being a voice actor you know of.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
and I think it
At
was
Mercer.
yeah, but I think it was Laura Bailey and Travis Willingham that both kind of like met and got started
Mhm.
in Texas, and I always thought that was a strange.
Yeah. I wish there was more of that out here in New England.
Yeah.
A meeting, just a chance meeting of industry, on the rise industry titans at the time. Because the joke is, if you want to be a guy and get into video game voice acting, well, you just need to be three things. You need to be Matt Mercer, you need
Yeah.
to be Troy Baker,
Yeah.
or you need to be Nolan North, and then you're good.
And yeah, it's one of those things is where it's like we've had a couple of voice actors on before,
I
and
saw, I
yeah,
saw.
and it just seems like some people can. I can't even fathom how they can do as many voices as they can do, but
Mhm.
it's not like if you're Brad Brad Pitt or if you're
Mhm.
William H. Macy, like you're kind of not even pigeonholed, but like you can play one
Yes.
look of character where voice acting
Yeah.
you can do so many different things.
Yeah. Especially so what's what's great about that is it's the most creatively liberating medium, I think, audio that exists out there.
Yeah.
Because a guy like me, 5'8", 140 pounds, glasses, would never get cast for the characters that I portray. I've played a warrior in Fire Emblem.
Hmm.
I play a lot of like villains or beastly characters, really larger than life. And in this medium of just audio, I can be kind of whatever my range allows me to be. I'm not limited by just any sort of, you know, physical limitation.
Right. Do you do any mocap? Is that a thing that you have? Because it seems like there's lot more of that going on along with voice
Um,
acting.
it would do me well to hop into that.
Yeah.
And it's no, I personally, I wish I've done some digital motion capture. That's something a lot like Andy Serkis has really made that popular.
Oh yeah, him and
And
not James Gunn, the other one, the other gun,
oh,
uh, uh, Sean Gunn.
Sean Gunn. Okay.
Yeah.
I know. Well, it's so common that like everyone's doing. I feel like every major studio has like a motion capture performance studio now.
Yeah.
Um, there's even campaigning. You see it on social. I see it on social media sometimes.
Hmm.
Campaigning for like the Academy. Can we acknowledge motion capture and digital performance and
Oh,
voiceover? Like, can we finally? We got a new SAG. There's a new
yeah.
SAG agreement. That's great. But can we get some major accolades like acknowledging that this stuff exists? That'd be great.
Yeah, and it's one of those things is I'll be the first to admit that um I used to have a comic book shop back in the day, and so I had tons of
Oh,
friends that
nice.
were in anime and and loved
Mhm.
cartoons, and I was kind of always like psh, voice
Is-
acting. That's not real acting. And then like the more like I found out about it and learned about it and saw like
Mhm.
the things they do, I'm like, okay, I was wrong. Like it's
Mhm.
a different animal, but it is definitely still acting for sure.
Oh yeah. And over the years, you can so when especially in maybe my audience or the people that I post memes on my YouTube channel. I do a lot beyond just like professional like voiceover stuff.
Hmm.
And what has if you most of assume when we say voice acting, they assume anime. They
Right.
assume video games. They assume some kind of fantasy
In a
animation.
world.
Yes. Yes. In a world. And I was building up to that. So thank you. Thank you
Oh,
for doing that.
okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump
Um
ahead, but
no, no,
that's
no. It focuses it.
yeah,
You can track though the change from, late 80s, early 90s, the acting and a lot of what was popular was extremely cheesy. It was very over the top. Famously, there's so many poor dubs from that era where like
sure.
foreign sounding films have the most stilted sounding American acting. And as the medium became, thanks to Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, stuff like One Piece, the acting.
Battle of the Planets, Star Blazers,
Mhm.
I'm more old school than that
Yeah,
stuff, but even
yeah.
that was,
Well, I've portrayed He-Man.
yeah,
I have been an official sound alike for He-Man, and so I know the fun acting of that era
yeah, yeah.
pretty well too. And as the medium became more serious and more widely consumed, you can see the acting gets seriously more dramatic,
Hmm.
and a lot they're taking it as, and that's just because the people take it seriously now. It's
Yeah.
more authentic. It's more true to life. I mean, trends on comments on that trend aside.
And I think a lot of it has to do with my generation. We grew up on
Mhm,
He-Man and you know, God, so many GI Joe and Mask
mhm,
and like all these
mhm.
um, great cartoons that
Yeah.
at the time were probably compared to Tom and Jerry and
Mhm.
Bugs Bunny were light years more advanced than just in
Yep.
story and topic. And then as we got older, that kind of nostalgia brought it be like, no,
Mhm.
these were like seriously great stories. And then you go back and you watch it and you're like, I mean, they weren't really great stories. But like we knew that it could be like they could go in that direction. And there's been some really great stuff that's come, after that. But like if you go back
Yeah.
on like the one GI Joe storyline that sticks out in my
Mhm.
brain to this day. Like
Yeah.
there were plenty, but there was one episode where
Mhm.
it was like this whole they were like 30-20 minutes something like that thing that was set up
Mhm.
about like the vipers coming, and then
Yep.
at the end this old dude shows up and they're like, who are you? He's like, I'm the viper, I'm here to vipe the windows. And you're just like, oh god, that whole show was
Though
set up a bad dad joke.
people and think about it, those creatives, those producers, voice actors, though they were driving into the studio to do that.
Yeah, going,
Think,
oh man, this script, I don't know.
yep. You're dry you've gotten your dramatic, theater license certificate, diploma, whatever, and you're driving in for, a big Hollywood paycheck, and you're doing these vipers, you're doing a viper tongue twister.
Yeah, yeah.
But that also sounds pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was just one of those, like, even as a kid, I was just like, oh, that was not their best work.
No.
Yeah. So
Mhm,
what are the struggles being a voice actor
mhm.
not in the scene, that
Right.
because I feel like so much of
Right.
what I do is that networking, going out, running into people like out at a bar, at a
Mhm,
show, and kind of networking there. And hey, we should meet, we should talk, we should work
mhm.
more together. Do you feel that you have a harder time because you don't get that opportunity?
Oh yeah. Definitely. But as a lot of, if someone is looking for your voice type, or
Mm-hmm.
in this, there's so many like casting pools and agencies out there that that side of things has gotten easier. But what I have experienced is that because the talent pool has increased so much, there's now almost, I'm not saying there's too much, because you should always be, look, pursuing your dream, especially in this field. It's the funnest job when you can make it work.
Mm-hmm.
But there's now almost too much. You now have who who is the most right person to talk to get into the work or the genre that I want to work most in.
Yeah.
And a lot of like YouTubers who were YouTubers, people just recording in their closet in their college dorm maybe 10 years ago, are now actually working in the industry, are now straight up established names themselves. There's a collaborator of mine, and we used to make videos together way back in the day. His name is Reagan Murdoch. He is the voice of one of the leads in an anime called Chainsaw Man. And that was just like number two all time anime of 2023. So
Oh wow.
it's just a lot of like fun little, like just kind of fucking around
Yeah.
10 years ago has turned into like a hustle and even an income for some people. So that networking never felt like networking. They're just people, industry connections that we have now.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you bring up a good point, and it's like there's a lot to be said about right place, right time.
Oh yeah.
15 years ago, someone fucking around on YouTube
Mm-hmm.
starts to gain a following, and they're like, okay, well, if I take this seriously, I
Yeah.
can make a career out of it,
Yep.
which who knew at the time. But
Mm-hmm.
now you have the people who are like, oh, I'm gonna make a career on YouTube, and you'd be like, it's so much more difficult now because
Mm-hmm.
you're not in on the ground floor. You almost have to look at like what's the next, what's after TikTok. Like, you have to kind of almost
Yep.
like start looking ahead to being like, what's the next platform that you can kind of take advantage of and hope that it takes off.
Yep. And you're always looking the days of just doing a fun little impression, as I have learned, as anyone who I think tries to make a creative on the internet work,
Mm-hmm.
those days and going viral and appearing on Jimmy Kimmel and, launching your career in like the span of a couple months, those days are long past.
Yeah.
I'm sure it still happens to someone, but I haven't seen it. Um, and you have to build your audience. You need to learn how to be an actor,
Mm-hmm.
which surprisingly, I early on I was just an impressionist. I didn't learn how to become a quote unquote. I didn't take an actual drama class until I was like 25.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of the scene that a lot of people, because to be an actor, to inject some of your authentic experiences, your vulnerabilities and your strengths, to genuinely put something like that into your art takes a lot of risk, and it's not comfortable. It's not supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be rewarding. But when I'm acting out a scene where my character is dead, or telling his son that things are going to be okay when he knows things are not going to be okay, is not supposed to be a fun day at the office.
Right.
That's what I've learned over the
Yeah. For
ten last 10 years.
you're so right. And it's like, when you see it done well, like
Hmm.
you don't really think about it, but in that
Hmm.
actor's mind, they're in that headspace. Like,
Yeah.
uh, now, kind of like speaking to so many people I've spoken to, that like you think you see a scene and you're like, "Whoa, that probably took a day to get over." Like,
Yeah.
to decompress and be like, "That was
Hmm.
rewarding." Is probably a good word, because it's not necessarily fun in a way that,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, you're kind of almost putting yourself through something tragic that you didn't go through.
Yep. And learning how to, that's where acting methodology, stuff like Stanislavski, sorry, method acting,
Yeah.
Meisner acting, learning how to conjure up your emotions. Are you imagining the scenario? Are you indicating the sadness? Are you indicating the emotion? If you're a method actor, are you living through it in your head? Are you reliving that constantly just to get the perfect take? And that creates authenticity. You're going to hear the A word a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you talk with a voice actor, authenticity is the key. And method acting does allow that. It allows for that raw performance, but I prefer Meisner. I prefer not really thinking about my script until you have put the words in front of me, because that allows my imagination, that allows my experience in media consumption, playing video games, engaging in role playing, my theater experience now, like that allows me to engage those healthy aspects of my toolbox, so
Yeah.
that we can record all night long if you want to. But if I'm just playing the whatever, the warrior, I can't method act as the warrior archetype for 2 hours. No, it's just not fun to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's interesting. Is it harder?
Mhm.
Well, do when you voice record, you I was going to ask a question, then I realized I'm like it might not make any sense because you
Oh no, fire
probably
away.
well no, I was about to ask like do
Mhm.
you find like when you're acting against someone who has a different method, then I'm like, "Oh wait, you're probably not in the same room."
No, you're 100%. You're right on the money.
Yeah.
A lot of voice acting is done in isolation. Especially that's a pitfall of remote recording is even through here through Zoom. I can read your face, but I can't read your
Mhm.
body language. I can't engage with you in the setting, in the scenario. I can't aside from quips and saying, "Oh, is this right? Is this?" There's a lot of limitations, and the methodology of will I work right with this person is more of a problem for live action movies.
Yeah.
Will there's chemistry building exercises, stuff like will Tom Holland have chemistry with Robert Downey Jr.? Tom Holland is has been trained in several forms of acting techniques and performance, so he can really work well with anyone.
Yeah.
But maybe someone like Jared Leto or like
I was gonna say you usually
yep,
hear the problems with the method actors where they're just like, oh, we're
yep,
crafty. Can you not be like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We know you're just trying to win an Oscar.
Yeah.
So have you just tried, I don't know, freaking acting, man? Um,
Yeah.
a good method actor like Daniel Day-Lewis, though, communication is key. He will have his people explain time and time again before the movie begins. I am going to be in character. I'm not going to be a jackass about it, but I am expecting you to sort of embrace the illusion a little bit.
Right.
If I say, you know,
Don't make me break character.
right,
Yeah.
work with me and I will work with you.
Like the one that I saw that I'm like, God, that has to be frustrating was Jim Carrey on Man on the Moon,
Hmm.
where like people would call and be like, hey, blah blah, this is an issue. He's like, oh, you're gonna have to take that up with Andy. And
Ah,
it's just like I am. Like I'm like, I can't, I don't think I could work like that.
Jim, I gotta get home to my kids. This is work for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh
Yeah.
well, it's work for Andy too.
Right. Yeah.
Jim,
Yeah.
just not now. Not
Yeah.
now, man.
Yeah. Can you call Andy for me? Like, I just, it just to me, it's that kind of like adolescent, you're mad at your best friend. So you turn to your other best friend and be like, can you tell Mitch that
Yep.
I'm not speaking? To me, it's just like, I
Hmm.
get the idea of trying to stay in character, but at some point, it's just like, oh, this is just
Yep. It has to
too
get done.
much.
It has to
Yeah.
get the work has to get done. And that's the line we all need to walk, right? Like we want to create, we want to have fun, we want to express, but at, you have to put out something at the end of the day.
Right. And
And
to his credit, it's a phenomenal movie. It's like he did a great job in it, but it's just like I feel like working under that
is so
is
much
tough.
more stressful than it needs to be.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, do you? Well, what are you working on now? Can you talk about anything that you're working on now? I don't want to make you break
Well,
any NDAs or anything.
I am under a couple NDAs right now, and
Yeah.
I really, man, I it's something that will be fun and will be big. I think I can. There is one thing that I can say about it. It's something that I've never done before. So,
Okay.
and it will have a wider release. So,
Can you say if it's
um,
a video game or a cartoon?
it's part of a live musical performance.
Oh,
That'll
interesting.
and it will be. I can't say the venues, but it will be playing in New York City, Boston, major. So hopefully it'll be fun.
Okay, that's pretty
It'll
cool.
be
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
And that's got to be that other kind of cool thing about voice acting is there
Mhm.
are, like we were talking earlier, there's the, obvious ones, but
Mhm.
there's got to be a ton of, extra, like anytime you're in, you know,
Well, we
an
have to.
amusement park and there's like a, please step to
Yeah,
the right side of the, whatever, but like
yeah,
there's got to be other aspects of it.
it's cool. Because almost whenever I record something, I never immediately see because it's such a small but pivotal part of the creative process overall
Mm-hmm.
that I will not see my work sometimes for years and years after the fact. When I recorded stuff for say the Fire Emblem, the Nintendo game,
Yep.
I did not see that work for 6 to 7 months until after I had done it. I did a commercial for a pretzel. I did a pretzel commercial.
Yeah.
I recorded the dialogue, and a year later, I got the paycheck and an email, a very pleasant little Gmail saying, "Oh, we're finally done." Oh, great! That's
Oh,
great
I forgot all about
demo. That's
that.
great. That's great real material. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's very rare that, especially here's something you might not know, just if you care about where this stuff is happening.
Sure.
Every commercial, if you're watching sports, if you're watching basketball, every primetime commercial, like say for Chipotle, McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, is recorded remotely. Um, and like the Chipotle commercial, like I have auditioned for Chipotle commercials and all that fun stuff. And I remember the script from a year ago. So I think it's interesting that so much is so asynchronous. It's not done at the same time.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
patched together over, it has to go to focus groups. It has to go to different people. Everyone's got to put their own spin on it before it can see the light of day.
Is there like, is there kind of like a bread and butter
Mhm.
job that is like lesser? So I have a lot of friends who are stand-up comics,
Yeah.
and they do a lot of corporate gigs, and I'm like, oh wow, really? And they're like, yeah, a lot. And sometimes they're on Zoom, and sometimes they're in person. Like, what is kind of that bread and butter, like pays
I
more money than it needs to? People aren't necessarily going to think of it as voice acting, but it's voice. Like, is there like that kind of
no, yeah,
like,
I know you have experience with the industry because it's the medium, it's like those medium business, maybe regional stuff like internal e-learning behind the scenes.
yeah,
Probably the majority of, aside from the maybe, the big video game credit here or there, that's the majority of my income
yeah,
as a side hustling voice actor that is slowly kind of transitioning into a bit of a full-time role himself.
mm-hmm.
Those are the roles you need to, you know, actually make your living and pay your bills still.
Yeah,
Um, oh, we're a small vacuum company in New York, and we've been in the business for 40 years, and we can maybe meet a one-time payment, but we can't pay the five-figure fees to reach out to get like a Morgan Freeman or like an A-lister in here. So let's
mm-hmm.
go with, oh, this guy is Northeastern based. He has credibility, he has credentials, he whatever. That's the next best, it's being the next best thing is
Right.
sort of what the niche.
Like
um
a session musician. He's not in the
yeah,
band, but he's at the studio and he's making a living. And
exactly.
it, what's like
Exactly.
the
No, a
what's
session musician.
what's the weirdest
Mhm.
voiceover that you've done?
The weirdest one
Yeah.
um that I've gotten paid to do, probably doing like a So it was a commercial for a company called Travel Leaders Network
Okay.
and regional travel company. They're, great, paid well, but it was a behind the scenes. It's called a sizzle, like a sizzle
The
reel.
sizzle
It's
reel. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, kind of like a mock concept before the commercial becomes finalized.
yeah.
And what I was surprised to see that made the final cut was I was doing the background voice for it was in an office, and this guy had this little creepy baby Buddha statue in the background that would
Okay.
like crack like a one-liner at the office worker who is, trying to do his work, but he keeps getting distracted by travel fantasies. So
Okay.
I my character, it's just he doesn't move his lips, and like the design was very unsettling. So it's this upbeat commercial, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden my deep dark voice cuts through like, get back to work, or that's enough, get, or just, this, we improvised a lot of like this kind of like mean, just get back on it, man. And
Yeah.
it wasn't weird, it was just, it was such a fun piece to work on. In the final product, I'm such a jackass.
That yeah,
So,
that's a different one. Yeah.
but that's what voice acting is. So much it's you have to sometimes take what you want it to be or what you imagine what you are imagining it to be, and you have to act to what the director is trying to create.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I've said it at the beginning, and it will never end. Voice actors love the sounds of their own voice. We will talk if you give us a platform. And working with some people, you can have a little too much fun.
Yeah. Do
So
you irritate your friends and family with voices around the house?
I've cut down on it over the years, but at the
Yeah.
beginning, oh yeah. Oh yeah. If I can bust out Yoda or Bugs Bunny, and I see the opportunity for a joke, oh yeah.
Yeah. I find where I have a bad habit of interviewing people, and like I was having
Mm,
this
yep, I get it.
woman by the house, and she was like, we had like one of those invisible fences for the dog, and like a tree fell and snapped the wire, whatever. So she was like repairing it, and like the whole time I'm standing over her shoulder, and all of a sudden I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my god. And she's like, what? I'm like, am I interviewing you? And she's like, it kind of feels that way. I'm like, I'm sorry. Because it's just like you're so used to kind of like talking to people like yourself, and then just
Mhm.
kind of teasing out those interesting aspects
Yeah.
in a non, you
In a
know,
conversational
yeah,
way.
and not in a, so where did you go to school? How did you get into, who was your favorite voice actor? Like that's, I'm not interested in that shit.
That's not fun.
Yeah.
You can read I mean, I don't have an FAQ, but read the FAQ on the
You got an
website or
IMDb page?
something. I do.
Yeah, I pulled it up.
And thank you. I appreciate that. Not a
Yeah.
lot of people do that.
Well, usually in like I used to always be like, I don't do any research. And then I'm like, I mean, I
A
do
little
like a
bit.
little bit, just so I'm not like, oh, so you were in Star Wars? And you're like, no. And I'm like, I swear that email. I
Mhm.
just realized I do this so much where my memory's not good enough to
Mhm.
remember the things that I read like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Yeah. So you
And no,
usually have
I
to,
get it.
yeah.
I get it. Doing, the Star Wars, the doing any kind of it's funny to me because when I first started doing just Star Wars impressions on YouTube,
Yeah.
I never thought, there's every voice actor knows the story of how Matt Sloan, the one of the producers of Chad Vader,
Oh my
Darth,
God. I forgot all about Chad
yeah,
Vader. Yeah.
that's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. Yeah.
He became the official video game and commercial and parody and basically non-films. He became the official sound alike for James Earl Jones in the early to, mid 2000s.
Yep.
And he started just in YouTube. So there's that every voice actor knows that story. But when I started, it wasn't necessarily my intention to make any sort of money or anything resembling, a professional gig out of it.
Hmm.
But I have worked with the video game Elite Dangerous. And they were creating Star Wars and sci-fi and sort of spacey downloads for their game Elite Dangerous. So a they couldn't afford James Earl Jones, so they went with me.
Right.
They went
And
with
at
a
some
James.
point, you're like, I can't even afford Chad Vader.
Yep.
Yeah, you know.
They went with me, the James Earl Jones sound like. And the same thing for Family Guy, the Quest for Stuff.
Yeah.
When they did the He-Man, I wasn't just the sound alike for He-Man in that gig. I was the voice of Thulsa Doom, who is portrayed by James Earl Jones in the Conan the Barbarian.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
so
Oh,
this
I haven't seen
little
that movie in ages, but yeah,
long time, I honestly I haven't seen it since I did the gig either. The movie is pretty bad,
yeah, yeah. But
or
in
it's
like that,
cheesy. It's
it's bad
cheesy.
in like that best '80s way. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right. Cheesy. That's
yeah.
that's the word, cheesy.
I'm a huge fan of bad movies.
Mhm.
When you were talking about uh movies coming over here and getting dubbed and not being the best,
In
most
terms of like acting
passionate, yeah,
quality,
I immediately thought of uh Prince
anytime
of
short.
Prince of Space. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I've never seen that one.
It's a
What's
mystery science theater 3000
Mhm,
gem, and there's just this little kid, and
mhm,
like I remember the line because like me and friends used to say it to each other, and it was
mhm,
I like boot blacking. I like it very much, and I think I delivered it with more
mhm.
passion than the kid did. And it's just the dumbest line, and
Some of those lines are very, that dialogue can be tough
oh sure, and it's like
to make.
you're crossing languages and cultures and trying to make sense of it all, and it doesn't always pan out.
Mhm. And that's where stuff like role playing, critical role, like, oh, here's this elvish language that you need to practice it because it is going to come up in this genre. And
Yeah.
you better sound Shakespearean when you're doing it because you don't want to be the guy that made someone else break character.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to cost them more money because you're making people laugh.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, has Critical Role, and I'm going to bring
Mhm,
this up because I'm a huge Dungeons and Dragons
mhm,
nerd, and they have the Matt Mercer effect where it's
mhm.
almost not always a good, like people are like, oh, you're not a you don't DM like Matt Mercer, and be like that's like being like you don't play hockey like Wayne Gretzky, like
Exactly.
it does it have a similar impact on the voice acting world? Like, are people
Yeah.
exposed to them and go, well, you're not a voice actor like, Sam Riegel. Like, no, he's got like
Yeah.
5 Emmys.
I definitely say there is a little bit of gatekeeping. It's not just gatekeeping, it's Matt, there's those three big voices, Mercer, Baker, North. Um, so the stigma and like, oh, you don't have his charisma, you don't have his voice print, you don't have his ability to just improvise and be sort of your own marketing presence. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but what's even, and I don't know if this is an established fact yet in the industry or not. If you listen to certain voice actors, especially now as more and more people have microphones like these at home, um, the we're settling into like there's a voice print, there's a type. So if you listen to you can tell when an actor is trying to emulate Matt Mercer.
Hmm.
You can tell when someone has very obviously listened to something beforehand, whether it's in pop culture or you can just sort of tell it's not 100% theirs.
Yeah.
And you can just tell. And I don't know. Maybe that's because a lot of us YouTube voice actors are learning acting sort of second, not out of order, because there is no guidebook on how to do this. But I think maybe what we're seeing is because there's a lot of voice actors my age in my generation who we learned how to do impressions and be funny and be meme masters and edgelords first.
Yeah.
We learned how to be actors and interpreters of drama and thespians, if you want to, if we can use that term. And I guess that's part of the gatekeeping right there. Have we earned the right to call ourselves actors yet?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I was doing,
And
like I said earlier, I was doing that where I'm like, they're not real actors. Like I feel
right.
like that is a very common mentality to have.
hmm And and when you book the role, the big, big, big anime or video game or whatever role, um, are you truly going to trust your own experiences and the stuff that you paid money for? Are you gonna go with that? Or are you gonna go with your safe version of what you know has already worked out?
Hmm.
And if it works, it works. If people can't recognize it, great. That's just stuff that maybe at the end of the day, it's just stuff that we nitpick.
Yeah. It all depends on perspective too. I
Right.
remember I was, I can't remember who, I want to say it was, oh God, Gary Marshall, I think, was talking about
Mhm.
working with Robin Williams on Mork and Mindy. And everyone's
Oh,
like, "Oh my God, Robin Williams, he's such a genius." And the cameraman's like, "If he's such a genius, why can't he hit his mark?" And it's just because he's so, improvisational, where like the camera's panning to the right
yep.
spot and he's not there. And I'm like, yeah,
hmm
it's you know, not, there shouldn't necessarily be an order like step one, step two, step three, but you do have to kind of like learn
Right.
one aspect of the trade, but then also hit the other aspect too. Like you still have to hit
hmm
your mark, even if you're improvising, and I'm sure it's fun, but there's some
hmm
dude who's frustrated as hell, being like, I just want him to be on the
hmm
X. I just want him to be on the X.
Yep. And that, Mr. I mean, I think that's an example. I don't know what specifically Williams studied. I'm sure Williams is his own
Oh yeah, yeah.
force all in of himself, but even being in the moment can still be a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily, Robin Williams was also just a really, really fun, nice guy. He maybe just got caught up sometimes too
Yeah.
much in the moment. Whereas you can cut this part out of the podcast if you want, but I'm just saying, Jared Leto, you if people call you out, just say I'm sorry. Don't double down on it. Just
Yeah.
say I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's that line. It is that line,
Mhm.
when you are trying to be. I have no personal attachment to Jared Leto.
Right.
But it's that fine line where you're really invested, you're trying to stay in character and mailing dead things to your co-stars. Like there's lines. Like it's that is Robin Williams missing the X. Like you can be great
Exactly.
at what you're doing, but there's a point where you're like, that's too far. You
All
didn't
right.
do what you're supposed to. You have to kind of, you're still a professional. And like, if you get caught up in the role so much that you're mailing, I think was it a dead rat that he mailed to somebody?
Something like that, like a dead
Yeah.
rat or a
That's
dead
too far.
farm
That's
animal.
just too far. Like
It's
oh
absurd.
yeah, it's ridiculous. And it's like, you're not the Joker. It's
No.
like, so it's just like you can't murder someone and be like, I'm just a method actor and I'm stuck in my role. Like that's not, no.
hmm
You're still a grown up. Be a grown up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, that reminds me of a really I don't know how much longer you want to go on. We can keep
No, we're
talking
good.
for
Yeah.
one my acting coach, Keeble Walker, great voice actor. He's based out of Texas. So yeah, there is some location proximity, I guess, going on.
Yeah.
Um, but just because method acting, if your method acting is Lady Macbeth, you do not need to kill your husband. You
Right.
maybe you instead, in a constructive and healthy way, maybe consult with your husband or someone who you trust. Why do you want to kill your husband?
Yeah. We actually had was it the last episode? Yes, I think it was last
Last
episode. We
episode.
we we had
Okay.
Crystal King. She's a
Hmm.
Nashville singer-songwriter,
Hmm.
and she's talking. She has a song called something about like why I killed my husband or how I killed my husband or something like that. And I was
Hmm.
like, she's like talking. I'm like, she goes, he loves it. He thinks it's really funny. And I'm like, okay, as long as like, it
As long as he's in on
on
as
the
long as
joke,
he's
right?
in on the
Yeah,
joke. Okay,
yeah,
good, good.
yeah. I'm like, don't make this like some sort of confession that I have to,
Mediate. I'm not your I'm a podcaster. I'm not a
yeah,
therapist. I'm not
yeah,
a mediator.
yeah. And I definitely don't want to be a witness in a trial.
Yeah. There's a lot of things I can guide the conversation to. This is
Yeah,
not one of them.
yeah. Um, but so I'm going to ask one last question, and
Okay.
this is kind of more interviewee question, but I'm curious.
Okay.
Is there a character that you haven't
Oh,
played that you want to play? Like, is there a bucket list character?
okay. That's a fun one. I was like, okay, now he's about to ask me what.
It's a very interviewee
Yeah.
question, but I'm
Yeah,
curious.
no, I was afraid you were about to ask me what I think about AI and voice acting because that's a question
Oh
no
my
one has
god!
the
So
answer to. But
there was
to
you just
uh,
sidetracked me, and I have to say
yeah,
this. So
yeah,
they just posted that there's an AI George Carlin full length comedy
I saw
special.
I saw
It's
that.
not good. It's not. It Some of the cadence sounds like George Carlin. The voice sounds like someone doing a mid impression, but
Yep.
it's not funny. Like some of the topics are like Carlin esque, but I was just like, no one should be worried yet.
And that's no, not just yet. I mean,
Yeah,
the AI has already replaced Darth Vader, but that's like there's a canon, there's a lore interpretation for that, so we can let it slide.
yeah.
The George Carlin nonsense is it's weird because those AI replicators do not cannot emulate just yet like the unique shape of our larynx. It cannot
Mm-hmm.
like if you're a smoker, if you have an accent, if you certain day-to-day things that just shape the sound of the day-to-day sound that we produce when we're doing our performances, the the factors we can't control. Like Carlin, I say smoking because Carlin very obviously smoked.
Right.
He hit his viral stride, when he was older. When you feed, because I heard it myself, when you feed that material that is so natural and so 100% weathered by just life, and you make this digital HD super high fidelity audio, try to recreate that with the cleanest pronunciation, with the fakest cadence,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the same thing.
No,
And
and you can't recreate Carlin's brain. And what made
not
Carlin
yet.
Carlin was his take on things. It wasn't that he
Mhm.
was just doing edgy shit. It was
Right.
his take, and like it was always a weird, surprising. You never really knew what
Mhm.
the hell he was going to fucking say.
Right.
And a computer can't do that. Like a computer can
No.
only regurgitate what you fed into it. It can't come up with
Mhm.
its own idea. And it
Exactly.
was so obvious. It was like I gave it like 15 minutes because I was just curious, and I'm like, I can't sit through this. This is just
This is trash.
yeah, like it's
This
not
is complete
interesting.
trash.
Yeah, it's not funny
And
and it's not interesting.
yeah. And it works for some like Joe Rogan and like podcasters. I guess like for memes and stuff like that, it works. It's funny. Joe Rogan does not have the most expressive and emotive voice out there.
Or a
So I
lot
guess
to think or say.
right. And so the AI works for him, but for entertainers who have a character and have actually something to say,
Yeah,
you're right. We have nothing to fear.
yeah.
And to actually answer your earlier question, I guess I could something that I could reasonably play, like a Netflix, like a curmudgeony, maybe old man, like something that I can kind of rely on the baritone of my voice a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
where I can like maybe put on an app, like the snarky old man who, every is not like a good character, but everyone loves.
Okay.
Kind
Yeah.
of like the main character. What's the Shameless? Where,
I've
the kid.
never. I gotta say, I've never seen it, but I
Okay.
know. I know what you're talking about. You made me
Yeah.
think of Travis's character on Critical Role now. Chetney Pockapy,
Travis.
curmudgeony, old,
Yeah. That's
doesn't
what I
always say
want.
the right thing, but
He has a
yeah,
heart of gold, and once he meets, at the season finale, he has that one golden line that proves that he has a heart of gold, and you're just waiting for him to do it again.
kind of like a Danny DeVito type character.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like
yeah.
he that's
A
that's
son,
the
an
roles he
always
always gets.
sunny.
Yeah, yeah, that's the kind of role he gets cast in. Kevin, I mean, we're at that point where like
Thank
tell
you.
our listeners where they can find you. You know,
Thank you.
do the things to support you. So all
Thank
that
you.
stuff.
So, Andy, I just want to say, thanks for having me. I'm a huge, supporter of Massachusetts-based art. I love the Inebri-art branding. I love
Oh,
this
thank you.
amazing thing you got going. I'm a huge believer in, I go to conventions throughout New England, and I'm trying to just build the creativity of this region and just show people that you don't necessarily need to mortgage yourself, bankrupt yourself to pursue your dream.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can find me at my Twitter, at KUrbsVO. That's KURBZVO. Um, and that same tag on YouTube. And I also have a TikTok at Kevin Urban Voice where I do fun dubs and memes of the characters I've portrayed, such as He-Man, fun characters like Darth Vader, and so much more. So there's my plug.
Nice, man. I appreciate it. And how this all came to be was we had grand
Hmm.
plans last year of hosting a horror convention and a Comic Con.
Hmm.
The horror convention was great. The Comic
Yes.
Con just got stalled on the starting block and kind of fell apart. And you reached out, and
Yeah.
I had a conversation Monday. I think it was Monday. I don't even know what day it is. I don't know why I'm wondering what day it is.
Couple days.
But
I
yeah, a couple days ago. But we definitely it's still on our chalkboard to get done maybe this year, and we
Mhm.
would love to have you. So
I would be more than happy to have on it. And hey, if you need help finding the guest, I know plenty of people who would be
hey,
willing to
that's
work.
always great, and we always need guests for the show too.
It
Um,
must go on.
yes, yeah, we'd love to have like I was saying, I think before I start recording. Not that I don't like having musicians. Musicians PR are just relentless. I get musician after musician after musician, and after a while, you're like, all right, we're not just a music podcast. So now you got to
Mhm.
like, let's get a chef in, let's get a stand up comic, and so like everyone
Yeah.
else is like more effort. So by all means, if you have someone you think that'd be good for our show, man, send them our way. We'd love to have them.
Awesome. And there's one thing I wanted to give you guys, one of my character call offs. I do this with
Oh,
every
sure,
little
yeah.
podcast. I wanted to do, because I've been doing a lot of He-Man recently, just
Okay,
for their, you know, quote unquote NDAs. We can't say anything,
yeah.
but by the power of Grayskull, you're listening to the Inebri-art podcast, Massachusetts' premier creative podcast for all the artists out there.
Thanks, man. That's awesome. That I feel like I should pay you now.
No. That's satire parody. Satire
uh,
parody.
awesome, man. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun, and we wish you the best. And you know, when you're
Awesome.
things you can't talk about, you can talk about. Reach
I
back
will
out. We'll get
send.
you back on, man. It'll be fun.
Hell yeah. All
All
right,
right.
man.
And listeners, make sure you catch us again next week. We upload every Monday. You guys should know that by now. And
Mhm.
yeah, we'll see you then.
Peace out.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there
for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. So thanks again for listening.